So those of us who had the displeasure of working at a sizable institution during the ascension of woke know very well the following pattern. So at first, some highly mentally unstable people started having certain crazy ideas that clashed hard with objective reality. And they were just sort of tolerated because we all wanted to be nice. And then quickly, over time, the pressure began to mount to not just tolerate these people, but to engage with them in their delusions about reality. Early on, there were just a few folks who thought that was a good idea, but with the passage of time, you'd have people who would first reluctantly tolerate it while privately complaining extensively about it. And then as the pressure mounted, they'd continue to be more and more fluid, pun intended, in their acceptance of this prescribed, ridiculous, absurd, and incorrect behavior. Pretty soon, they became just as zealous about it as the mentally unstable people that started it all. So much so that they would never remember or admit that they ever had any issues with it whatsoever. In fact, those people came to persecute and outright denounce those who echoed the very protests that they themselves had offered just a short time prior. Why do I share this? So most of us, are familiar with this. If you have a job where you're more in touch with the real world, say in the trades perhaps, maybe you never experienced this. But for more office type jobs, especially in larger companies, you most likely have experienced this, and hopefully you haven't succumbed to it. We look at this and we say, oh yeah, this is such a crazy, absurd thing. But actually it's not. It's just a specific example of the general principle, and it's a general principle that can very easily poison you. So much so that even if you never drank the woke Kool-Aid, you're probably drinking some other flavor. No one likes to hear what I'm about to say, but almost everyone is a liar. I'll make a more extensive case for that later. But you really need to start to understand how much this affects us individually, in our marriage, with our children, with our parents, with our neighbors, at church, and in our communities. Our society as a whole is an extraordinarily dishonest group of people. One of the hardest things about putting your finger on how much this matters in your life is that one factor of dishonesty is once you slip into it, you start to lose your rational capability, and you don't even notice. Like I said, and like many of us have seen, the people that fought the woke stampede early on, and they ridiculed it, at least in private, they succumbed to it, and they became some of its most ardent supporters. What changed? Well, little by little, they were willing to do what they didn't want to do, to say what they didn't believe, and to allow what they thought was quite harmful to go unchallenged. And that's how it goes. And so often, when you observe someone further down the line on any of these things, you have the very unpleasant task, not just of helping them defuse this bomb that they've created, but it's a bomb that they won't even recognize as there. They certainly don't actually remember building it. And they'll probably fight you quite a bit if you try to point it out, let alone help them defuse it. It's a very, very difficult thing. It's not for the weak-hearted. It's very difficult to wrangle with somebody about things that they're not willing to be honest about. It's very painful, but it is really important.